In the last video, we've learned how to connect a Google Sheet to Google Data Studio as a data source. This time around, we'll be adding from a Smartrek monitoring system using Smartrek API connector. The Smartrek API connector is a partner connector which is maintained by the Smartrek team, and unfortunately it is not yet available in the connector suggestion list, but it will be in the future. So for now, we'll be accessing the connector from a direct URL. So I've added the link to the connector in the video descriptions for your reference. But before we access this connector, first there are a few prerequisites. So obviously we're going to need a Smartrek app account with a system online that is currently pushing data to the cloud. If you already have such an account, then also make sure that it's an account on app 3, not app 2. So how do I know if my account is on version 2 or 3? It's simple. If you log into your system from app3.smartrek.io, then you are on version 3. Otherwise, you are on version 2 and you'll need to create a new account on version 3 and change your system to send data there. That's not all. So you also need an API key as well as your account ID in order to authenticate on the connector. So if you haven't requested for an API key yet, then you can do so by logging into your account and navigating to your profile, and then under Edit Profile, click on Create API Key. Keep in mind that this API key will be linked to an usage plan. So this means that you are limited in the number of API calls per month and also per day, depending on your subscription. But in any case, unless you'll be refreshing your dashboard every few seconds, this should not be a problem. So once you've created an API key, grab both the account ID and the API key that we've just created. And now let's head over to the connector. So I've just copied the link and I'm going to paste it here. And just as the Google Sheet connector, I need to authorize this connector to access my data. So click on Authorize. And then you're going to see a pop-up. You can't see on my screen right now, but it's there. And just choose the account that you're going to use. And then you might have a pop-up saying that the app isn't verified. If that's the case, it's because it's not officially published yet. So that's okay. You can still use it. Click on Advanced. And then there's a Go to Smartrek API connector and safe. And you can click on that. Don't worry, it's totally safe. It's just that Google hasn't had time to verify it yet. So click on that. And then you have another pop-up and it says a Smartrek API connector wants to access your Google account. And you can just click on Allow. So now I have a new option here. So choose a single module to fetch data from. So there are 3 options in there. We can fetch the logs from a sensor, which are historical data. We can also fetch the current data from our sensors. So this corresponds to the data that is shown on the device list page in the Smartrek app. And finally, we can also fetch a particular value from one of our sensors here. I'll explain the difference later. But for now, let's add the current data from our sensors. Select the second option and click on Next. So this is where we're going to authenticate. So grab the information that we've saved before and paste it here. So here I'm going to paste my account ID and my API key. Here and click on Next. So now we move on to selecting the devices that I want to fetch data from. So I'll just select them all. Oops. Almost done. Only a few left. Click. All right, I have them all, I think. So now we're ready to connect to our data source. So just click on connect. And now you'll be shown a page that we're already familiar with, and that's the fields and parameters configuration page from Data Studio, as we've seen earlier when we've added a Google Sheet data source. All right, so there's really nothing to change here. One thing that I'd like to do though is to rename my data source. And we'll want to be very detailed when naming it, because as we're adding more and more data sources, it'll become a real mess if everything is named Smartrek Technologies or Untitled Data Source. So to quickly find my data source, I'll name this System1 device list. For the rest, we can accept all the default settings, and we're now ready to add that to our report. So click on Create Report. And Add to Report. Okay, so there we go. And as before, a new report is being created, and Google Data Studio creates a table by default. So that's it. We now have our first data source coming from our Atrax system. And in the next video, we'll go through the Google Data Studio interface, and I'll show you around a bit so that you'll know what's available. So see you in the next lesson.